I ate the darkest mythical fruits from Blox Fruits and unleashed their true power. My mission now is to unleash all the dark power of the mythical fruits, but not just any fruit. It's only the ones that are scary. Like Venom and Shadow, which are going to be the main fruits we're going to master. But to make that happen, I first have to eat our fruit so we can start mastering it. We already have the first attack, which when used releases some poison, and the longer you hold it, more damage you'll deal. On the first try, I just clicked. Now on the second one, I'm really going to hold it. We managed to deal 3,000 damage, and defeating just one NPC is enough for us to unlock the movement. And when we use it, we transform into a dragon. I can't exactly say what kind of creature this is. His flight isn't that fast, but it's different from any other fruit. And if you release the flight on the NPC, it will end up taking damage. And it's no small amount. If you can really hit him directly, you can deal over 5,000 damage, and the movement ends up being stronger than the first attack. So if you can hit the NPC just with the movement, will help you a lot. And by defeating this NPC that also uses the poison power, we're going to unlock our third ability. And when we use it, release a gigantic poison. It's a really good ability, especially because we keep poisoning the enemy. But the movement is still stronger than the second ability, which doesn't make much sense because locomotion is stronger than the skills we use. But it's also a good ability that you don't necessarily have to hold. Just clicking is enough. For some reason, my poison was floating. For some reason, our enemy is buried in the ground. Buried, no. Half of his body is inside the earth, but I can't say why. But by defeating this last NPC, we're going to unlock our second to last ability. I hope it's stronger in our movement. And when we use it, can just click or hold the attack. But it won't change much because we're going to create this mist around us that deals damage to the enemy. It deals interesting damage, but our movement still stronger. And to use the mist power, you always need to be next to the enemy to hit him. As for the movement, if you just hit him the first time, you can deal damage to him frequently. But the mist is still a good ability for you to use. By defeating these NPCs now, we're going to unlock the last ability, which is the transformation. One of the coolest abilities of our fruit. I just can't really say what that would be. I don't exactly know what we transform into. I would say a three-headed dragon. We don't stay transformed, ever. To be able to transform, our fury has to be at its maximum. And when that fury runs out, our transformation will also end. And the more abilities we end up using, the more we spend our fury and less time we stay transformed. The skills, when we are transformed, will not change that much. What really changes is the damage and the distance we can hit the enemy. The second ability is pretty much the same. The only thing that changes is the animation, because we create this gigantic poison ball that we can throw to hit the enemy. But the best ability, in my opinion, is the sea, because before we created a mist, and this time we're still going to create a mist, but in a much larger way. And anyone inside that area will end up taking damage and getting defeated. If it's against a player, they'll just run away from the mist, but still take damage. Against a boss, you can defeat him easily due to the attack's huge range, causing continuous damage even in the purple smoke. The strongest ability, VOW, remains powerful with a new animation. Transformed, we become a creature with 3 floating heads, hitting all nearby enemies. The exact damage of this attack is uncertain. We continue to be transformed into this animal, which I don't know what it is, but these 3 heads float around us, and when we hit the enemy, we don't just hit one, everyone around us. So there's no certainty about how much damage this attack does. Now, an extra ability of our fruit is the jump, because when we jump while transformed, we jump really high. And even though we have wings, we don't fly while transformed, but we can still fly. An additional ability is that when we fall to the ground after jumping high, we release some poison. It won't damage the enemy unless they walk through the poison. An extra ability is that when we fall to the ground after jumping high, we release some poisons. It won't damage the enemy, lest they walk through the poison. But overall, this is a really strong fruit to use.
Now the next dark fruit is going to be the Shadow, and we're going to have to unlock all its power too.
And I don't know if there are any other mythical fruits that can be considered shadow fruits. But as far as I know, Venom and Shadow are the only fruits we can consider to be shadow fruit. And now we just need to eat and master this fruit, so then we can see its true power. In the first ability, we hold it, transform into dark smoke, and attack the enemy, doing a combo that I can't really explain very well. We have this dark smoke around our body. The good thing about this first ability is that we can also use it for movement, since it goes really far just by using it. Besides being very fast, whenever we defeat the first NPC, we can already unlock our first ability, which is the movement. I just don't know if it's going to be that fast. But when we use it, we turn into a trail of smoke. Some bats around, and it's not that fast, but it works. But from what I understand, it also doesn't last very long. So it's not one of the best movements out there. But to help you out, you can use 2 abilities, which would be the movement. And as soon as it ends, you can use the first attack, go a bit further. The flight of the last fruit dealt damage. I just don't know if this one will deal damage too. And we can also deal damage. We have to keep hitting the enemy. But we can deal a lot of damage all at once. It was almost 10,000 damage in just one attack. The only downside is that you'll have to keep hitting and staying close to the enemy. But it's still a good ability for you to defeat your enemies. I think that by defeating this boss, we'll be able to unlock next ability that costs 100 mastery. But first, I need to defeat this enemy to see if we'll really get enough mastery to unlock this ability. And we really did it. I ended up getting more mastery than I thought, but when we use this ability, we leave a trail of smoke that ends up exploding. I didn't quite understand this ability. After testing this skill a few times, I think I understand it. We're going to leave a trail of smoke, traps our enemy, and then releases an explosion. But what I didn't quite understand is why the explosion happens inside of the enemy. In this case, we can't hit the enemy with that explosion, so I don't really know exactly what it's for. But it's a good ability that drains the enemy's life. I found a way to hit the explosion on the enemy, but in the end it doesn't change anything. Even if we hit the enemy from above and the explosion happens, explosion is just an effect. It doesn't deal any additional damage. I unlocked the second to last ability, and when we use it, we dash at the enemy and unleash a really cool power. And we deal for 3,000 damage. And in this ability, we have an extra skill. When we hit the enemy and we're low on health, drain their life and recover our own. So, in the end, this is an attack where you deal damage to the enemy and heal yourself at the same time. The only downside is that you can only hit one enemy at a time. If you try to hit with this area attack, fortunately you won't be able to. The same was for the first attack. You can only hit one enemy at a time. As for the second ability, you'll be able to deal damage to both enemies, but the main damage, biggest hit, will be on the first enemy you hit. I just unlocked the last ability and I didn't even notice, but when we use it, we become gigantic and end up exploding, creating this dark mist that hits the enemy. But now, if it's a player, they'll be able to escape that mist by teleporting. Even if the enemy manages to escape, if you can hit the NPC and they don't get away, you'll be able to deal over 9,000 damage, which is a lot. And that, in the end, was the strongest ability we've had so far. From what I understand, this shadow meter, the higher it is, more damage we're going to end up dealing. If I use my ability now, we're going to deal over 9,000 damage. Last time I used it, I was already almost at the beginning. It dealt less than 8,000 damage. It's exactly 10,000 damage. So really, the more shadow you have accumulated, the more damage you're going to deal to the enemy. What really impressed me about the two fruits is that one of the strongest abilities turned out to be flight. Not just the strongest, but also an ability that deals more damage. But between the movement of the Venom fruit and the Shadow fruit, I prefer the Venom one because you only need to hit once and the enemy will take the full damage. With this fruit, you need to stay close to the enemy for a long time to deal the full damage. But anyway, indeed, both fruits are good.